Welcome to Bad Actors, the cybersecurity podcast and go-to guide for cutting-edge insights and cybersecurity solutions. I'm your host, Rebecca Craddick, and I'm delighted to welcome today's guest. Patrick Gillespie is the OT Cyber Practice Director at GuidePoint Security and Armis partner. Thank you so much for joining me, Patrick.
Thanks, Rebecca. It's great to be here.
So I'm really excited about this conversation because we've been talking a lot about critical infrastructure and operational technology. We're going to talk a lot about that today, big talking points, obviously, in the industry at the moment. Talk a little bit about your role at GuidePoint to start with and what you do for your customers.
Got it. Yeah, so I've been the OT practice director at GuidePoint. I've been here about 3.5 years. I lead the team of OT security engineers, and also we have consultants that help, with the IoT side of things as well. But we essentially help protect our clients' critical infrastructure, whether that's a city or county, power facility or water, wastewater, or manufacturing or transportation, or healthcare. There's the things that the typical IT vendors or IT security companies don't usually understand.
Right.
It's very, very, very physical. It's very old legacy things. So yeah, we have a dedicated team that does the defensive things in OT, offensive incident response in OT, help them essentially build their cybersecurity program from the ground up in OT.
And we talk a lot about this, specifically operational technology, that you mentioned that word legacy, which we'll come back to in a minute. But we talk about also the complexity of these environments. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what operational technology actually is. People tend to look at it from a legacy manufacturing environment. But if we know, every single organization will have operational technology, whether it's a building automation system, whether it's air conditioning, all that kind of stuff. Now, I want to start our conversation around the threat posed in this space, because every single media outlet in my world talks a lot about critical infrastructure attacks. We know the geopolitical landscape is particularly challenging at the moment, and we have a lot of threats coming from bad actors around the world. Talk to me about how you are looking at this with your bench of experts, how you're really trying to address those early conversations when you're engaging with a new customer, and how you start the journey that they're on.
So GuidePoint Security has been doing cybersecurity for about 14, 15 years. So a lot of major, or any size corporation, we have about 5,000 clients where we are trusted from a cybersecurity perspective. So essentially, now that OT is getting attention, and due to things like COVID and the convergence of IT and OT and the need for remote access. So we now have our clients, who are typically the CISO, the lead of the security team, especially in the C-suite or the board, is our CISO is the contact. So they're now coming to GuidePoint and asking, hey, can you help us with OT? Because a lot of times they don't know what's out there. So essentially, we meet with our clients that we already have, that again that trust GuidePoint and have for a long time, and then we're able to tell them the things that we can do in OT. There's a lot of things you don't want to do in OT, especially like traditional IT pen testing, or things that are commonplace in IT, common patch management, vulnerability management, those kind of things. So essentially start there and just tell them what what risks are typically found in OT without doing any assessments, to kind of get them to plan and think of getting leadership buy-in, right? Because but the first thing we want to do, though, is find out who the stakeholders are on the OT side. Because we have seen cases where a CISO will buy a technology or try to implement something, and if they don't have the support of the OT asset owner, there's often political challenges within the company.
Okay.
So we try to help bridge that. We bring in both sides, whatever we do. If it's an OT workshop, if it's asset discovery or security assessment, we will bring both sides in. That way they can see the plan from the beginning, and that way both sides are a part of the decision-making process, because everybody wants to be heard.
Yeah.
So priorities are different for a CISO versus a plant manager. So we can get into that more later, but that's where I think GuidePoint really bridges the connection, even though they work for the same company, the IT/security team, and then the OT, typically would be controls engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, a lot of times.
And do you find that conversation between those two groups obviously some will be more integrated and they'll understand
Yeah.
the challenges for each parties. But do you think that's improved over the years as people have become more aware of the importance of both groups working together, or is that still a little bit of a challenge?
It's definitely challenging, but there are some, it just really just depends on the culture. So, I worked in manufacturing for a long time. I was a CNC programmer. I built elevators, and then I went and built freight trains for 8 years. So, but the company I worked for was from the 1800s.
Wow,
So
okay.
it's a little
A lot of
bit,
change.
a little bit before the
Yes.
internet. So, I think the first freight or engine was made in like 1812, so a long time ago. So I worked for a company that had the culture from like late
A very long time as
1800s.
well.
It's
Yes.
like, why would we spend some? We've been doing this for 150 years. Why would we spend money on doing this when it's been working fine this
Fine.
whole time? So a lot of it depends on the culture. There are companies, even manufacturing, that we have clients where we've done projects for the last, let's say 18 months, for example, and they just keep bringing us in to help with the next project because their IT and their OT sides already had a relationship. So once that's typically the hardest piece because the OT asset owners, they're the ones making money for the business,
Right.
not IT, not the CISO. So if they want something and understand the purpose of doing it and that it's not going to add risk to the safety of their people and their equipment, then they're more likely to help go get budget.
Yeah.
You know,
And help the
yeah,
conversations internally.
exactly.
Now, it's interesting because you referenced a couple of, I look at these words that are used a lot. So legacy environments, operational technology has transformed a lot over the last couple of years because we're talking about that legacy infrastructure. We throw around opportunity in environments where they're air gapped. That's the desire for some organizations. The move to an on-prem versus virtual environment. There's so many different challenges that they're trying to contend with. And of course, if you overlay that with the cybersecurity environment, another 50,000 sort of things get added on. How do you go through that from a consultation and sort of implementation discussion right at the beginning of a customer's journey? How do you have those conversations with them to find the best technology fit?
So that's where we just have to meet them where they're at.
Okay.
Do they have an OT asset inventory? And typically the CISO does not. They don't have a good inventory of the hardware or software. A lot of times the plant manager probably would, or whoever owns that piece of the process, right? Whether it's, distributing electrical power or, machining an axle for a train or whatever the process is doing in operational technology, or like you mentioned, HVAC, keeping the building cool or heated, those kind of things. Whoever owns that, they typically have that inventory. They know what machines, because they're the ones responsible for maintenance if the machine goes down or the process goes down.
Right.
So figuring out who those people are and then bringing them all together to consolidate that, because it's hard to pick a technology. It's hard to secure something if you don't know it's out there or what it is.
Can't secure what you can't see.
Exactly.
I'll strap
So
one of our
there
strap
has to be,
lines.
you gotta see it, and then you can create the plan, but it also has to be prioritized. You can't secure everything in OT. There's some things that may not run but once a month or once a quarter. That's not as critical as something that is providing power to a hospital, for example.
And business transformation, of course, needs to continue while you're upgrading your system. So yeah, there's certain things you can't transform. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are about the implementation and impact of AI in this environment, because outside of maybe some of the core critical infrastructure, we talk about the transformative power of AI and also the negative implications of it. In an OT environment, what do you think will be the challenges if people were to consider implementing some sort of AI-empowered agentic AI environment? And do you worry about that for customers?
Yeah, threat actors are going to be leveraging new technology way before there's regulation or legislation or even, a 0 day is, never been seen, right? So you can't have the definitions of something that doesn't exist yet. So for on the, the defensive side. So yes, there's definitely concerns with any technology, but even in OT, it doesn't have to be AI to take it down. It can be a minor port scan, right? Having technology in OT that understands OT like Armis does, it's safer to do things. So AI is being used now So from not really from an agentic standpoint, but the way Armis monitors the behavior. So not all devices can have an agent in
Hmm.
OT. There are IT devices in OT you can put an agent on to monitor that behavior, the processes, the memory, files, behavior of that PC from an agent based. But when we deploy Armis, we're able to monitor the behavior of the devices that can have an agent by monitoring the traffic passively. So when we're monitoring this traffic now, we get the traffic off of this layer 2 switch over to the Armis, the Centrix sensor, and then get that to the cloud, and then the Centrix platform or Viper Pro AI can then be leveraged because again, it's not being done actively inside OT.
Hmm.
We're just taking the behavior and we're, working together to figure out, are there threats in this? Is there any malicious behavior in this
Yeah.
in this traffic?
Hmm.
Essentially, I know that's a long answer to your question,
No,
but
that's
but
good.
yeah, so it's starting to be in use from a defensive standpoint, but I think there's still a long way to go.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's just to implement an AI technology and have it sitting actively in OT, I think there's still a ways to go for
Yeah.
those kind of things.
And I think look, everything transforms and evolves as we go forward. And I think as technology is implemented in a different way, you'll see that obviously as you say. You brought on the partnership with GuidePoint and Armis, and at Armis obviously we're a partner first organisation. So one of the things I'm interested in is how we work with organisations like yourselves
Yeah.
in really changing and working on projects that the customers are in the process of, whether it's 12, 24, 36 months, whatever it might be. Now, GuidePoint and Armis have been working together for a long time.
Yes.
How do you find that environment and that partnership working together with some of the things that you've done in the last couple of years?
Got it. So the client I mentioned that we've probably done, I don't know, 10 or 12 projects for, including, getting visibility, leveraging Armis. They're a shared client of ours. Once we figured out the visibility piece, built out the inventory, then we figure out, what can be patched. Is there even downtime to patch the things that can be, patch management is not as like, prioritized like it is in IT. But then also create that segmentation. So essentially, um, any OT has legacy Windows devices, legacy PLCs, things
Mm-hmm.
that were built for automation or for whatever the system is it was built for. It was not built with security in mind. A lot of the first PLC was built in
Yeah.
1968. So I know I'm throwing out really old dates here, but there's a lot of old technology, and that technology is still in use today, like from
Mm-hmm.
the 70s, 80s, 90s. AS400s, from IBM mainframe type days. Those kind of things. So yeah, our clients. So like that one, we were leveraging Armis, getting that visibility, because one of the things I try to start them on, even though there's a million and two things you need to do to secure OT, right? So,
Right.
so you can't do it all at once. I know people like to say you can't boil the ocean. I know that gets used a lot, but you can't do it all. There's no budget, there's no time, and you don't have to. There's things you can do. So one of the things we really focus on is once we use Armis, either during an assessment or we deploy it, we can identify the devices in OT that communicate directly to IT.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are a lot of good business use cases to have devices that, or to get the data out of OT to make better business decisions. You see where inventory is, what's work in process, what's waiting to be shipped, so on and so on. Also, the need for, remote access, for your vendors to save travel,
Yeah.
keep uptime, all those things. So, we were able to monitor the traffic between IT and OT, and then that way we build out pure OT secure remote access,
Mm-hmm.
even from IT, because OT, we need to protect it from IT. A
Yeah.
lot of the bad actors, like Salt Typhoon, for example, their primary endpoints into getting into a network is through IT.
Mm-hmm.
Their indicators of compromise are like there's a Sophos RCE or Fortinet or Cisco or Avanti. They'll use these typical IT vulnerabilities that are 2 or 3. They're only 2 or 3 years old, but that's how they get the foothold. But then there's no segmentation protecting OT from IT.
Right.
So that's where kind of, I'm throwing out buzzwords, but like zero trust.
Yes.
You don't want to trust IT. Like IT should be treated like the internet. you know. So that's like to keep
Exposure.
OT, yeah,
Yeah.
because resilience is one thing. So to be resilient, and of course, everybody wants their network to be resilient. Resilient means there was an attack, there was an outage, and it came back. We were able to recover. Maybe we had a proper backup strategy. Maybe we were still using tapes and shipped them, and nothing got encrypted there, and we recovered, whatever. But with OT, it needs to be survivable.
Mm.
So a friend of mine actually at Mantech told me that a long time ago. So it's always stuck with me because with OT, if it's a power grid and it's feeding a
Right.
hospital,
Yep.
like if there's
Criticality
if
of that.
IT is attacked and is completely obliterated, you have to keep the power on. So you don't want to. So yes, if there is an outage in the power, you want it to be resilient, to know how to bring it back online, have those controls to do that. But really, you want it to survive that attack.
Of course.
And the way to do that is to protect it from the IT network.
Yeah. And it's interesting because if I look back in the last 12 months, this IT OT convergence story is never going away. But I think you're 100% right. What you've just outlined there is the potential, the positives, but also the ramifications of that kind of environment. And it is not suitable for every environment.
Yep.
I think it's interesting to me how cybersecurity has become a mainstream talking point to every human on the planet recently, because you see headline news where critical infrastructure, to your point about hospitals, airlines, air traffic control systems, water companies, they are being targeted now because it has the biggest impact on day-to-day human lives. It's not just a technology conversation, it is a society conversation.
Yeah. And that's where I know the key, another buzzword, cyber physical, because cybersecurity for years, it was all about the data. So in IT, your CISO or anybody in IT, it's all about keeping confidentiality of your data, keeping it secure and safe, encrypted when it's in transit to somewhere else, to the cloud or to another system, or at rest, making sure that if a hacker does get in, even if they get the data, it's encrypted. It would hopefully take 100 million years to decrypt it, right? Hopefully. I know decryption is getting a lot better too. But on the IT side, if, for example, a front office user, clicks a link on an email, ransomware, phishing happens a lot still. The security team is going to shut down their PC or their network port or both. So essentially, that person, whether they're an accountant or a salesperson or PR, they will lose their ability to do their job. They will not be available to do their job until they get a recovered system, whether it's the same one rebuilt or a new one. So now they're sitting there. They can't work. They can't do their job. So the CISO sacrificed availability to save confidentiality. So that's where the prioritization comes into place. Everybody understands the CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, availability. For OT, they could care less about confidentiality. There's protocols that are not encrypted. It's clear text. Some devices have no authentication, no integrity, but it has to be available. So that's where, their concerns come from a different viewpoint than the CISO. So even that's why you got to have a separate OT incident response plan and playbooks, because if you see even if you see ransomware running on a HMI, running Windows XP or 7, whatever, even Windows 11, your security team, if they have the same playbook and they shut that port off or shut that computer off remotely, you could really hurt somebody. You could damage millions of dollars of equipment. I mean, loss of life could happen. So that's so now that's not about data.
No.
That's about saving,
lives.
Saving lives or preventing the loss of life. Essentially. So that's what truly, and I don't think a lot of people get that on the, like you hear cyber physical, it's,
new buzzword.
New buzzword, but it truly means like physical safety. Physical could mean your employees, your equipment, your IP, your proprietary information that's on these machines, those kind of things. So it's just a different way of looking at it. But cyber's always been a serious thing. But with this, like with OT, there has to be, I don't know, I don't want to say more attention given to it, but and delicate's not the right word either, but it just has to be, it just can't be done the same way.
No, I agree. And I think it's It is there. There's a somber note to it, and
Yeah.
because the ramifications are huge. I
Yep.
want to pivot a little bit to something you said earlier. So about a year ago, Armis expanded its vulnerability offering, making sure that we could help organisations prioritize and remediate some of the vulnerabilities, the deluge that they have every single day. And you talked a little bit about the importance of that.
Mhm.
Can you talk to me about how GuidePoint approaches that particularly, and how they might be leveraging Armis Centrics for that and Viper Pro?
Got it. Yeah, yeah. We definitely. So we even manage, Citrix and Vapor Pro for clients
Mm,
because a lot of time. So I don't know, throwing out another question here, but who truly owns risk in OT? So if you have an OT asset owner that doesn't care about security, they
mm,
care about uptime, safety, availability, and you have a CISO that cares about security, but they don't own the asset and they don't own remediation. They have no control over fixing it.
right.
So who truly owns it? Like it has to be a joint effort. So that's where we leveraged, Armis and again visibility and network threat detection because that's pretty much non-existent in most OT environments today. And we leverage Viper Pro because when we deploy Armis, there's always more assets than they think.
Mm,
There's
yes.
always a lot more vulnerabilities than they think,
Yes.
and some can be pretty old,
Mm,
decades old.
mm.
So, even if all new OT devices that were sold today moving forward were secure, you still got 20, 30, 40 years of legacy debt of risk
Right.
out there, still out there. And so leveraging Viper Pro, so if we get we have clients that have millions of assets in
Mm,
Armis. So if you have a million assets in your OT environment and you got 5 million vulnerabilities, like again, you can't just shut down everything for 10 years to go
no.
patch it, right? So what do you do? And then like you mentioned, an airline or air traffic control, like if something's running 24/7, you may have one shut down a year, maybe on a Christmas and for manufacturing, we were typically shut down around the holidays because you always want to do preventative maintenance as well. And that's something else Armis has helped us with is we get data off these machines that typically only the physical site operators had access to.
Mm,
But now we can pull that data and we can create alerts in Armis.
mm,
Like if you're monitoring the temperature of something, if it goes up a degree or down a degree, well, I want to alert for that.
yeah.
Is that security though? Not really. But
Preventative
that's how we
security, right?
sell it to the OT asset owner.
Yes.
That's what they care about.
Yeah.
So not so much, yes, the CISO loves the threat detection and the visibility and we can create patch management or, whatever, all these policies, procedures based off what we see in Armis. But to the OT asset owner, we can help you get alerts and do maintenance quicker and
Mm,
plan maintenance better without having any unplanned outages. So that's really how again, because we try to include both sides again at the beginning,
yeah.
because that makes that journey a whole lot easier for everybody if everybody's working together, and that's the only way to secure critical infrastructure. But again, that was a 10-mile loop around your question. But
Makes
so
sense
back to
though.
Viper Pro though.
Yeah.
So we've got these millions of vulnerabilities, whatever. So we're able to leverage Viper Pro because instead of my team manually and having to charge a client every hour to sift through vulnerabilities, is there a patch? If not, are we going to, segment? We're going to whitelist, but it helps us prioritize not just what vulnerabilities need to be remediated or have a mitigating strategy
Mm-hmm.
like whitelisting or micro-segmentation, but prioritize the asset. So we're able to, again, you have to have that contextualization of what the asset is,
Mm,
because there could be a lot of assets that are in a lab environment or in a passive system that's hopefully never used because the active one is running,
mm-hmm.
right? So that's where we're able to prioritize these assets. That way, if there is a patch or a exploit that is available, that they are, and that we get an alert that Armis says, hey, these are vulnerable to this new exploit, based on the firmware version of this
Mm-hmm.
PLC, whatever. So we're able to then, do, maybe we have to do additional whitelisting or maybe prevent any remote access, even from IT or from the internet, until we can get them patched,
Mm,
or some kind of, remediation. So it helps us on the GuidePoint side be more cost effective for our clients from an automation standpoint is kind of really how it helps our team. Because again, like coming from a rail car company from the late 1800s, like there was never budget
Yeah.
unless there was a cyber incident. You know, never want to let a good incident go to waste on budget buy-in. But so that's where it's like it's hard even for CISOs. It's hard to start getting that, especially if the OT asset owners are not, you know, on the same page.
Yeah.
You know, because again, OT asset owners, when I got most of the money for even IT gear at the railcar manufacturing facility. We had a lot of repair facilities too, but for maintenance, from local
Maintenance. Okay.
maintenance. So like, because IT wouldn't approve it, so I was like, so I'd go to the maintenance manager.
To
It's like, hey, I can
keep
help
it
keep this
in its
running.
static
Yeah,
state.
because
Yes.
if you have a switch that reboots, you know, once a week, and it's like, hey, IT won't pay for a switch, but you know, I'll keep this going for you better if
Right.
so they'll buy it.
Yeah.
You know, but they, you know, so if OT asset owners want something, they'll go get it from IT or maintenance or production or you know, unless security can, you know, kind of cover
Kind
the
of cover
bill.
it.
So
It's a bit of a personal question, but I guess being in this industry and the criticality of what you do for customers day in, day out, and the things you know and the things you see, do you worry about the state of security in this space at the moment? Do you think it is as dire as the picture that we are painted, or do you think there's hope on the horizon?
there's definitely hope in the horizon. There's more awareness. There's still not a lot of not been a lot of behavioral change,
Hmm.
even though like you have the typhoon groups, you know,
Yeah,
bolt typhoon, salt typhoon, they have other names too. But, you know, like, because, you know, are we at war? Are these, you know, acts of war, you know, because it's a nation state attacking
it is.
our country. You know, it may not be attacking. I mean, they released 2 weeks ago that Salt Typhoon was in our National Guard last year for 9 months. Got data from all 50 states. So that is a National
That's
Guard's
an
a
attack.
military
Yep.
organization. You know, they were in there. They knew what they were, you know, pulling data from those systems. And there are a lot of beliefs, even in, you know, well accepted, that China is in a lot of these OT
Yep.
systems living off the land, waiting for
And has been for
something,
some
and
time.
has been for a long time. Correct.
Mhm.
So that's where we go back to IT security. So what really drives IT security? You know, what drives businesses to put money into penetration testing or put money into Armis for their IT assets? You know, a lot of times, you know, it took a long time for the CISO to be or to have a CISO position in companies, right? You know, initially it was the IT director who worked for the CFO. Then hey, now we have a CIO role. Then they got respect. Well, hey, security is a new thing, you know. So then, well, we need a CISO role. Well, will the board even let them play at the big, you know, adult table? You know, CISOs were kind of, you know, uh, treated differently for a while, but they now have respect. So organizations have matured over years for the need, but a lot of it was compliance driven. So, you know, PCI compliance has been around for several years, and for OT, like NERC SIP for electric. So if sadly, a lot of times you have to have a fine, or it has to cost more not to do the security solution than it does to do it.
Yeah.
So that's where, you know, GuidePoint does a lot of IT penetration testing. So for our clients that do credit card transactions, you know, if they don't have
Okay.
their penetration
Yes.
testing done by a certain date, they get fined
Fine.
every day.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, well, what's the CISO going to do? It's like, it's going to cost 10 times more to pay the fine. I'm just going to go do a pen test.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
So
That
that's, so
makes
that
sense.
drives. So again, it's not the, you know, it'd be nice if people like, hey, this, you know, see the value and
Yes.
more than a checkbox type thing, but that does drive a lot of security.
Okay.
There's a lot of compliance. Again, that's why, you know, electric facilities have a lot of the segmentation and things because of the NERC SIP, you
Yeah.
know,
Compliance and regulation.
you mentioned airlines. So we do a lot. So since I've worked in railcar, transportation. So we do a lot with the freight railroads, passenger railroads, and passenger rail and airlines. So they have now the TSA directives. So they are not fast, not quickly, but are moving. So we have again shared Armis GuidePoint clients where we're helping manage the OT and IoT assets for, you know, airlines, airports, or, you know, rail, whatever, and we're able to, you know, again, help them prioritize that. But it also meets that TSA directive
Directive.
compliance again.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
but again, that's really more the driver.
Right.
It's more so than, oh, China can attack me. I think
More
people,
compliance,
it's more,
regulation,
yeah,
and things that they're requesting,
because I
for
think there's
sure.
so much of like crying wolf. I heard the story, where, you hear it all the time. And I think all these attacks, like St. Paul, Minnesota is still recovering. They had to bring the National Guard in and two cyber companies because of the attack in the city.
Yeah.
I think it started with a business email compromise, if I remember right. But then it went to the police department and the different, systems that help the city operate and keep
Yeah.
it safe. So, it's, there's just, but at what point, how bad does it have to
Have to
be
get
before somebody wakes up? But that's
right.
where I think, so like Armis and GuidePoint are members of the OT Cyber Coalition.
Yep.
So it's a nonprofit in DC. So I work with Cam Chumley there, and he's on the Armis side. And we essentially advise the White House, Congress, Capitol Hill on how to secure critical infrastructure.
Yep.
Because they're politicians. They might not know what zero
No.
trust means.
They need some
They don't,
guidance on
yeah,
what the next step
they're
should
still,
be.
they're
Of
hearing
course.
AI, they're seeing China. I mean, but so just like as we prioritize assets and vulnerabilities in Viper Pro, politicians have
Yes,
prioritization
of
too
course.
with social media now. So they're having to prioritize immigration, all the changes since the election, the Iran-Israel conflicts, the
Yep.
Russia-Ukraine conflict. So it's like, at what point do you prioritize this?
Something else has to go
Yeah,
before you can,
you got to
yes,
resolve these things or
of course.
start seeing traction, and then because they are swamped. Like our government is there's so
There's a
many
lot
things
to
going
do.
on in the world.
There's a lot to do.
And there's a lot of things that people just don't know about.
No, of course. Final question: the next 6 months to a year, the sort of early next steps of GuidePoint from now. What's high on your agenda for the remainder of the year?
So for the remainder of the year, yeah, 6 to 12 months is, we're starting to do a lot more incident response in OT environments.
Okay.
So what we've built at GuidePoint for OT. So again, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's always IT inside OT. You got, whatever OT system it is, there's something there. You have to have a network switch, or you have a wireless access point, you got routers, you got firewalls, you got Windows PCs, whatever. So we have built joint practices or joint services at GuidePoint. So GuidePoint has experts in identity and access management, incident response, digital forensics, business resiliency, or disaster recovery, pen testing, AppSec pen testing, all these different things that GuidePoint's been doing exceptionally well at for years. So really, and my OT engineers do all the real work. I don't do real work anymore.
I'm sure that's not
I
true.
say I'm just a pretty face for OT, but whatever. That's what helps me sleep at night, I guess. So we've built these joint services. So like we do OT incident response. So I work with Mark Lance and Tony Cook's team to where, we do it together. So, if it's an OT, if I send an OT engineer, it's like, oh, it's ransomware on a Windows XP machine. Well, they're not Windows forensics experts. They're OT asset,
Yes.
PLC automation. So if we just send somebody from Mark or Tony's team and it ends up being on a PLC or something they don't know, so that's where, so for the next 6 to 12 months, continuing build out joint services, but especially incident response, because there are not many capable companies of doing that inside OT,
Right.
But that's where GuidePoint has such exceptional knowledge and skills. We have over
Yeah.
1,100 people, hundreds of we're cybersecurity focused only, and so building out the incident response. But we also build out their plans and their playbooks and, identify those asset owners, because, when we do an OT, we have started doing OT tabletop exercises. So companies on the IT side, again, often have compliance where they have to do this annually for whatever compliance, or if they just want to do it. And we're starting, so when they finish the IT one at the executive level, we go back and it's like, well, what happened if that incident spread into this machine in OT? And then you point it to your SOC. Well, who are you going to call? Like, I don't know. Call an OT. Well, they call but for the in the business, like the SOC doesn't know who owns the asset.
Okay.
They just get an alert that there's a potential ransomware. But yeah, of course, they should always call GuidePoint. But we can help them bridge that gap. But so we show the executives and get their leadership buy-in by they see that there's a disconnect between their SOC and they're the people that are making money for their business. Like, so that's where, showing them that with the OT tabletop exercises, creating the OT specific plan, because even before you do that segmentation between IT and OT, it takes time to understand what communicates between the two systems to do proper remote access. And, like I just recently purchased Ortorio,
Yep.
to do those kind of things for us to, do it the right way, do remote access the right way from IT. But we're able to, essentially kind of help build out that plan, that playbook, because again, the response has to be different,
Right.
Because of the safety concerns. So yeah, so we're building that out. We have several engineers. I'm hiring 3 more OT engineers in the next week.
Wow.
So we're growing very rapidly. But again, we're also, kind of, helping all the practices grow. That's kind of my goal, is to, because, OT needs all the things we're doing in IT.
Yeah.
One solution can't do everything. You can't do, like Armis doesn't remediate and patch PLCs, right? You're not going to come in and, Armis isn't going to prevent this PLC from talking to this HMI. So you need segmentation, micro-segmentation. You need, all these different things.
An ecosystem of everything.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah. So there's no there's no silver bullet.
No.
Per se, So, but
it sounds like you have a good.
CISOs hope there is.
Oh,
They're like, well, what tool? What tool will take care of all this for me? It's like, no, just GuidePoint. We're the only ones. But let's bring Armis in. We'll start there,
and we'll work together.
Perfect. So that's kind of the next, continuing to build out the team, and then growing with all the other GuidePoint teams, essentially. So and it's been
a busy couple of months ahead.
Loved growing this team, and like I said, my engineers are awesome. They do all the hard stuff. So
I'm sure they do.
They do. Oh no, they do. They know they do. So
brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. It's been really nice talking to you.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Good luck with the rest of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you.